soil can move. This is the great example of what happens if you take away the natural ecosystem that exists on top of the soil and destroy that natural barrier that protects the soil from the weather. If, in this case, the weather gets very dry, the soil then, just by wind, can move. And this is what happened in the Dust Bowl. Alright, the Dust Bowl is a great example of what can happen to our soil if we remove the natural protection on top. And in this case, we removed the prairies, we planted farm plants. The farm plants couldn't grow in the dry conditions that occurred in the 1930s. Then the crops failed, soil was left exposed, winds came, picked up the soil, and carried it for miles, depositing it all over the place. 1930s. Should have learned our lesson. In fact, we're smarter than that today. But are we? Have we really learned our lesson? And as you're going to find out, the answer is no. Because here are pictures of Phoenix, Arizona this past summer, where the exact same thing that happened in Dust Bowl happened in Phoenix several times. You have unprotected soils, failed crops, strong winds, and you end up with these huge, gigantic dust storms moving towards the city of Phoenix, Arizona. And down here at the bottom, this is a close-up of the winds coming, creating nighttime during the day. So the same thing is happening today in the United States as it did in the Dust Bowl days. We haven't learned our lesson about protecting the soils. So what exactly happens when, instead of wind, it rains? All right, and when it rains, you end up with erosion. Erosion is the process which moves soil from one location to another. That's what erosion is. Now we have different kinds of erosion, and I'm going to quickly go through these. The first one's called sheet erosion, which just means you're taking entire layers or parts of layers of soil and moving them downhill because of rain. All right, in this case, we're talking about areas that used to be protected or are no longer protected, and the soil just washes away. So if you have a farm or something which is not plowed properly like this, you get a rainstorm and you get huge masses of water moving down the hill, which picks up the soil, the topsoil, and moves it away. And this is a shame because one major storm can remove an inch or two of topsoil through this process called sheet erosion, where the entire layer moves. Yet it takes nature 75 years to make 1 inch of soil. This is not a sustainable rate, so we have to be very careful of how we manage our soils. When Columbus first came to this continent, the average depth of our topsoil was about 20 inches. Today, the average depth is somewhere around 7 inches. We have to be very careful because this soil is our medium for plant growth. Okay, we have to understand that the soil is what we need for all plants. It filters our water. It's habitat for a variety of organisms. And it recycles our nutrients. So soil is important because it plays 4 major roles. 1, it's the medium for all plant growth. 2, it filters our water. 3, it's a habitat for organisms. And 4, it recycles our nutrients. And yet we let it wash away in a rainstorm through sheet erosion. Okay, and here is a farm where you see sheet erosion occurring and the plants can't grow there anymore, so every time it rains you're going to see more and more erosion. Here's a close-up view of the same type of condition and you can see the erosion. All right, we need to protect the soil. We also have a second type of erosion called gully erosion, and in this particular case, land that is starting to erode forms deep gullies, usually during heavy rains where you have flooding conditions, and these gullies get deeper and bigger all the time, as you can see in these pictures, and the land just continues to wash away. On the left-hand side here, you'll see an area in the United States that used to be forested is no longer forested, and you have huge amounts of erosion because you took away that protective layer. On the right-hand side is even more severe. That's in Morocco, and you have huge gullies formed because of massive deforestation. You took away that protective layer. The trees above the soil slow down the rainfall so that you don't have this hard splashing of raindrops, which then holds the soil in place. The roots help hold the soil in place. It has a protective shield over the soil. When that's gone, you end up with erosion. And you can see that in very bad conditions. Here's another great example, more local. This is in Pennsylvania, where you have such bad gully erosion that it actually took away a road. And then you have this thing called rill erosion, just for a third type. Rill erosion is when you have small little channels form, usually like on the sides of cutaways of highways and things like that. All right, all of which, the important idea here is that you have soil eroding away. And then you take a construction site where we come in and alter the natural habitat. And then when it rains, you end up with the water moving. Now, when that water moves, it picks up soil. And where does it take that soil? That's the question. Well, we should all realize it takes it to the nearest stream. And in this particular picture, which I think is a wonderful picture, you can actually see the stream coming from two different locations. Water coming from this direction, this branch, and then water coming from this direction. One of them is coming from a developed area, the other one is coming from a natural area. I think it's very easy to see the difference. This back in this area is actually from a natural area, and you can see that the water is much clearer. Where this side goes back to a developed area. Farms and houses, which you can barely see through these trees back here. All right, and there you've got erosion. And look at this soil going into the stream. That soil is a form of pollution called sediment pollution. And it has the distinction of being the number, one. That's a 1. And if you didn't understand me, that's a 1. It's the number 1 form of water pollution in the United States. Sediment pollution. That sediment is harmful to fish, wildlife, stream organisms, including plants, and we're going to get into great detail of how that affects the life of a stream. And that's for another unit. But you can see the difference. Now, let's go to even more extreme differences. Here's a nice muddy river after a very simple storm. On this particular satellite view, you can actually see the river as it moves, and when it floods, you can see what they call the floodplain areas where it's depositing all of that mud that it's carrying. In this particular case, you can see also the muddy river coming down this way, the tributary coming into this larger river. Okay, you can see mud deposits over here and over here, and you can just see that a huge amount of soil is being lost from the land and moved into the rivers. And we got two examples here which I think really show a big difference. At the top, you got a stream that's protected, and if you look around both sides of that stream, you will see that the stream is actually surrounded by forest. Okay, and these are rocks and boulders here on each side, and that forest is a buffer, protects that stream from any erosion. And look at the water. It has a nice blue color to it in there. Now go to another stream that's fairly nearby when you've got farmland all along here, deforested, and now look at the color of the water. Sediment pollution in this case, clean, buffered water in that case. All right. When you have protection around a stream from any type of erosion, we give it a name. We call it a riparian. That's RIPARIN. Buffer. All right, riparian buffer is very famous. It's a buffer zone of plants around a stream, protecting the stream from erosion and sediment from getting into it. Remove the riparian buffer, like you see here, and you get all kinds of erosion into your stream. See, you're just learning so much about all this stuff in such a short time. This is just a great picture off the Mississippi River down in the Gulf of Mexico, where you can actually see how severe the mud is coming out of there, where you can actually see a dividing line. Here is a satellite picture where you can see the haze off the coast of Florida from sediment washing off of the farms and the land. This is Florida. The crystal clear waters of Florida are not so crystal clear like they used to be because of sediment pollution. Famous example, in this case, you may know this. This is the Chesapeake Bay. We are located on this map somewhere up in this area, way up at the very top. This would be Cape May, New Jersey, right there. And this is the Delaware Bay going up to Philadelphia. All right, and even in Delaware Bay, if you look at it, you can see all of the sediment coming out. And then you go here to the Chesapeake Bay, and you can just see sediment, sediment, sediment everywhere, sediment all down. In fact, almost all along the east coast of the United States here, especially in the bay. All right, so you can see all this sediment coming off of our land into the ocean, where it's going to end up at the bottom of the ocean where we'll never be able to use it. And in Madagascar, here's an extreme example of soil erosion. And again, it's basically tropical deforestation, now removing your protective layer, and that's what you end up with. So what are we doing to stop this? Well, when we have construction sites, we put up this material called a silt fence. And a silt fence is designed to hold back the soil so it doesn't go into a nearby body of water. The silt fence is put into the ground about 6 inches down and then about 2 feet above the ground. And the idea is that the silt fence will stop soil from going through, so soil can't go through, but water can. So it kind of filters out the water to prevent any soil from eroding down. And if you look at other pictures here of a silt fence, all right, here's one where it's put into the ground, trying to protect a nearby waterway. At construction sites, this is what we do when we have bare soil, so that if we get heavy rains, it holds back the soil. And here's a great example of a housing construction site where you have silt fences and rocks. The rocks are there to slow down that water. So we do things to help prevent soil erosion when we alter an ecosystem, but sometimes it's just too big of a problem and we don't get to have any real solutions. Now, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to come. Okay? You should be absolutely amazed by soil at this point and the importance of soil, because you now know all the dirt about soil.